Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. Time to wrap up Steve Sarkisian's pregame Zoom call. It's Texas and Vanderbilt on Saturday at DKR. Sark talked a lot about the injury report, what Texas needs to do to win the ball game, and much more. We'll get to that here in just a minute. This edition of On Texas Football is brought to you by our friends at Hayes City Store. We'll tell you more about Hayes City Store here in just a little bit. CJ, right now at the top, let's go ahead and get to it. Arch Manning and Michael Taft both practiced on Thursday. According to Sark, this Zoom call he does with the media is post-practice. So Arch is still in the concussion protocol, making progress. CJ, as far as you know, what's the latest on the availability of both 16s for Saturday?
Yeah, both of them are back on the practice field. This is day 3 on the practice field for Michael Taft. This is day 2 of increased participation for Arch Manning. Of course, for Arch specifically, still has to clear protocol, right? Being on the practice field does not mean he is cleared from the concussion protocol, but it is, again, steps in the right direction. And as I've been reporting this weekend, Jeff, Texas doing everything they can to make sure that Arch is cleared and on the field for the game this weekend. But look, those are two of your most important leaders and players on both sides of the football. To get them back on the practice field for consecutive days in a row is, again, a step in the right direction for the Texas Longhorns.
Sark talked on the call about leadership, and he brought up guys. One thing that he said that really stood out to me, he said DJ Campbell's starting to become the leader that Sark has envisioned him being for about the last 6 or 7 months. He talked about guys like Cole Brevard and Hero Canoe on defense. And I know those guys are veteran guys that have been around for a while. But, CJ, even some of the younger guys like a Jelani McDonald, a DeAndre Moore, guys stepping into leadership roles, this team is really growing up, and it's gotten callous the last couple of weeks with these overtime games on the road. But this is starting to – hopefully you see that in a team that's kind of evens out, raises the baseline a little bit, is a little less erratic. But overall, CJ, this team's got something about it, and the leadership core is starting to improve.
Yeah, of course. And look, you mentioned the last 2 games Texas has played. There's been a level of going on the road over the last month where Texas has needed to come together as a team, play as one unit, and really have each other's backs through all 3 phases. And Sark said, even though we're playing at home once again, right, it's been a while, 42 days. In fact, to have the fans at our back, we cannot lose the connectivity between our team. And, our leaders have made it very clear in practice and in film, behind the scenes, to make sure that we continue to play together and play towards the common goal, which on a given Saturday is winning. And Jeff, that was another point of emphasis from Sarkisian. He doesn't talk about the big picture all too often with his team, but when he does, look, he makes sure to get his point across. Texas has 4 games remaining. If they win out those 4, they have a great chance to make the college football playoff. But Sarkisian said, even though he brought that up, it was only about a minute and a half in his speech earlier this week. He made sure to say the biggest and most important game of the weekend of the season is the one this weekend against Vanderbilt. So don't lose sight of the big picture for what's right ahead of you. He's making sure that his team is focused on what's coming over the next 48 hours.
No doubt. You're sitting much different heading into the bye week at 7-2 with 1 conference loss than you are at 6-3 with 2 conference losses, knowing you still got to go to Georgia and you still got A&M coming to town at the end of the year. CJ, I want to go back to the quarterback situation real quick with Arch Manning. And Sark said, look, the game plan is the game plan. Nothing is going to change regardless of who the starting quarterback is. But his level of confidence in Matthew Caldwell, and he even said, look, we've only seen a very limited sample of what Matthew Caldwell brings to the table, but you pointed it out, and I think it bears repeating. With Arch on the men, he's gotten all the work with the ones. He's been in the meetings, in the huddles, running whatever drills you're running in practice, team periods. Guys have confidence, and guys have all week expressed confidence in him. Sark expressed it again today, CJ. I don't think this offense overall is going to panic if Matthew Caldwell has to start this game.
No, it doesn't sound like it. And again, we've heard it from Sark on Monday and now Thursday. We heard it from a number of players on Monday. It's been really interesting. And of course, you're going to have confidence and have the back of a teammate, but it's kind of been very outward, Jeff, right? They think that Matthew Caldwell is a guy that could certainly lead them to a victory if he's needed, right? If his number is called, as we've seen in Florida and on the road at Mississippi State, he's delivered in key situations. So there's confidence there. And The one thing that really stood out to me when talking about Matthew Caldwell or needing Matthew Caldwell this weekend, Sarkisian said, look, we're not preparing for two different offenses, right? We haven't made any changes in terms of what we want to do. Schematically, it's the same offense. It's the same approach. You just got to go out there and execute it. And so that, again, speaks to the level of confidence from the coaching staff that they have in Matthew Caldwell as well.
You pointed it out, though. If Arch is not available for this game, you're probably going to see a lot less. You may not see any quarterback run because, as you mentioned, and it bears repeating, man, if Arch isn't available now, you're one hit away, one play away from KJ Lacey being the guy. I would prefer, CJ, for KJ Lacey's first big-time collegiate experience not to be thrown into the fire in a pinch against Vanderbilt.
Yeah, look, that's a top 10 team. They are a very havoc-driven front seven. When you talk about sacks, tackles for loss, rush defense, that front seven plays with their hair on fire, essentially, right? They're top 20 in all three of those statistical categories. And for a first-time starting quarterback to see their first ever snaps as a true freshman, that is not a world that's going to be very fun to be frolicking through, Jeff.
Yeah, and Sark talked about efficiency. We talked a lot about the Vanderbilt offense, how efficient they are. But hey, the best way to minimize their offensive efficiency is for the Texas offense to be efficient. Sark talked about how important it is for that. That's saying a lot, CJ, for an offense that has been anything but efficient this year. If you're Sark, I want you to get into Sark's head real quick based on what we heard on the call, you putting the tea leaves together throughout the week. What's the best plan you think Texas can take for this game on Saturday?
Yeah, it's not going to be a plan. It's just you got to score points. You talk about taking time off the clock to preserve your defense. You talk about, finding ways to establish the run. That's all great, but unless you're putting points on the board, you're continually putting your defense in a tough spot, right? They cannot break because there's no guarantee that Texas has another 17-point comeback in them in the fourth quarter, right? So whatever you think, if you're Steve Sarkisian, you have to do to put points on the board, you have to do it offensively. And if that's going fast from the jump, if that's airing it out from the get-go, you got to do it, right? If you got to be super aggressive on third and fourth downs, you have to do it. Trick plays. We haven't seen a fake punt this year. We really haven't seen anything like that in quite a while. But if you're Steve Sarkisian, you have to do what you need to do to put points on the board because, look, this defense is battle-tested, right? We talk about it, over 85-plus snaps over the last 2 weeks combined, in each game. They're worn out. It doesn't matter, but they're right now used to that. So if that's what they're used to, they know that they have to play a lot of snaps. They know that their depth is going to be tested. The best thing you can do for them is to put points on the board and create a buffer on the scoreboard.
That's why I am team take the ball first if you win the toss this week. I want to try to put as much pressure on Vanderbilt, not let them settle into what they've been all year on offense. We'll get back to the game here in just a second, but right now, I want to thank our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football. That's our friends over at Hayes City Store. There are very few restaurants that once you go to them, you know right away it's a special place, and Hayes City Store is one of those places. It's scratch-made Texas comfort food. They've got their famous truck stop enchiladas, the award-winning chicken fried steak, homemade desserts. It's all good. It's all made from scratch. They've got live music 6 nights a week, 50 beer taps, ice cold long necks, and tasty margaritas, 13 TVs in the ice house. That's a perfect game day setup, whether it's Saturday or Sunday. And if you're out there on Sunday, they've got that brunch menu available from 10 to 3. Hayes City Store is dog friendly. They've got a tree net for the kids, plenty of room to run around. So gather your whole crew, get on out to Hayes City Store. For more information, check out the website, HayesCityStoreTX.com. Hayes City Store, it's uniquely Texas. CJ, I asked Sark because I'm just fascinated with Vanderbilt's offense, specifically their offensive line. They've got that old school approach of they got a quick side and a strong side. They don't have, they'll rotate based on the strength. It's one of the most efficient, effective run games in the SEC, in the country for that matter. And when I asked Sark about how he feels about their defensive line depth, he said point blank, for this game to go the way we want it to go, our defensive front has to come out and play. And CJ, normally you'd look at it and say, man, you faced roughly 90 snaps the last 2 games. Your defensive front's got to be worn down. And even though Lance Jackson's on the injury report, that's how deep Texas is, that you're not really worried about it. You can have a couple of high snap games and still have guys that, for 8-9 games into the season are relatively fresh. That speaks volumes of the depth Texas has defensively.
Yeah, absolutely. And the growth for sure, right? You go back to that leadership conversation, Jeff. He mentioned a number of guys, Cole Brevard, Hero Canoe. He said Alex January stepping out of his shell and into a larger role as well. That's huge because look, you go out and you add a number of guys out of the portal. Well, how do they mesh? How do they kind of work with the back end units as well? And right now, it's becoming a strength once again for the Texas defense at the moment. And against a team like Vanderbilt, as unique as they are, with a running game as potent as they are, and a quarterback that is going to look to create and escape as often as he does, your defensive line is going to be tasked in many ways that they haven't seen so far this year, Jeff. So to your point, not only is it big for the interior, but those edge guys to make sure that they are sound, assignment sound, and making sure that they are, rested and ready to go, because this is 3 straight weeks in a row. Colin Simmons has put up also a career high in snaps. It's not just those interior guys, but all the key pieces in that front seven. They're worn down, and this is one more chance that they need, or one more challenge they need to get through before that bye week comes. And I'm sure they're all ready for that bye week, Jeff.
Yeah, CJ, I think in closing, and I'll pitch it to you for your final thought, but we talk about efficiencies on both sides of the ball. I keep thinking about something the late, great Augie Garrido used to say, and it's a baseball term: get your outs on time. Man, if you're a pitcher, you got a batter with 2 strikes, put them away. If it's a ground ball, don't try to be a hero. Just make the good, safe play and get it out. Get your outs on time. When you've got opportunities favorable to go distances on 3rd and 4th down on offense, and you've got an opportunity and it's in your favor on defense, you've got an opportunity to get off the field, you've got to be able to execute in those situations. If you don't, it's going to be a really long day for you on Saturday.
Yeah, look, you can go right back to this game a year ago. Where did Texas get in trouble? It was turnovers in Vanderbilt's side of the field, and it was not taking advantage of a lot of penalties, right? There was chances for Texas to have a pick six late in that game. They didn't. And that game ultimately came down to recovering an onside kick to seal the deal, in which it probably should have been a 3-score win. So to your point, Jeff, can Texas play disciplined at home? That's been a challenge. Mm-hmm. Can they get on and off the field in 3rd downs and live ahead of the chains? That too has been a challenge. On top of that, you talk about the offensive lines and the defensive lines, again, living ahead of the chains. That's something Texas will have to do this weekend. And fortunately, I think playing at home is going to be a boost that, quite frankly, they haven't had over the last 6 weeks.
CJ, I said it on our Wednesday live stream. I'll ask you, I'll get your thoughts on this. I said, I will be surprised, and I will be, if this isn't the most prepared, fired up, focused out of the gate Texas we've seen all year. Will you be surprised if this Texas team isn't really sharp right out of the gate?
Yeah, I would be. And I know that's kind of interesting to say, given that they've had chances to go to Gainesville and they weren't sharp, right? They've had some slow starts elsewhere. But look, the fact of the matter is this: the coaching staff has pitched this weekend, quite frankly, as the Super Bowl, right? As your SEC championship game. It doesn't matter what happens after this weekend if you do not come away with the victory. All your chips are in the middle right now against Vanderbilt. And guess what? If you win, well, now you get a week off. Now you get to recoup and go on the road to Athens, in which the intensity and focus is going to be just as high for a game against Georgia, who's had your number since you've joined the SEC. So, yeah, everything is basically riding on what this game against a top 10 opponent in Vanderbilt will look like. Jeff, I would be shocked if Texas comes out and plays sloppy, given what we know about this team right now.
The old Mac Brown line, CJ, was they remember November, and the calendar's going to flip to November, and you've got a massive one at home coming up on Saturday morning. We'll see how Texas shows up and how it plays out on Saturday at DKR. CJ, thank you so much for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to our friends at Hayes City Store for sponsoring it. If you're not a member, over to ontexasfootball.com. You can get over to the site right now and sign up using the promo code OTFOG, and then I'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our coverage before, during, and after every Texas game this season. And don't forget, on Saturday, our game day coverage. We'll have the Saturday conversation posted early. The tailgate show, since it is an 11 o'clock kick, tailgate show is going to start at 9 a.m. At 11 o'clock when the game starts. Got the Watch With Us, hosted by Aaron Hogan. I'll be a part of that. So will the coach Bob Shipley. So will Rod Babers. And then Jerry Hamilton will also be on the Watch With Us. And then immediately after the game, it's Bobby and Rod Babers anchoring our post-game coverage here on the channel. So do not miss anything. We've got a jam-packed Saturday from stem to stern with Texas and Vanderbilt. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.